Imagine driving down the road and noticing up ahead a terrible accident, and as you see the victims mangled in the wreckage, you recognize your adult daughter being extracted by the first responders. Linda shares how God strengthened her through this horrible nightmare. Then we'll hear from her daughter Tina, who will astound you with her heavenly experience as a result of this accident.
I have two very special verses that means a lot to me, and I was sharing them with a co-worker on the morning of February 26, 1999 for her to memorize. And those verses was Psalms 46:1 and 10a. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. And be still and know that I am God. Little did I know that day that God was going to bring those verses back home to me. I was headed to town when I came upon an accident, and I looked over and it was my daughter, and her car was just devastatingly bad. And as I looked on, I saw them putting her into the back of the ambulance as I ran down that hill telling her that I loved her and that I'd be into the hospital soon. I ran back. We didn't have cell phones then, and I ran back to a payphone to call my church to start out the prayer chain, to take my petition to my Heavenly Father for Tina's life. Assurance came to me that this was all a part of God's plan, even though I didn't understand it. As we sat in the waiting room and waited for the doctor to come and give us a report, he said she had a sheared brain on both sides, a broken arm and collarbone, and facial damage. And I was so taken in by the facial damage and so glad that I hadn't seen her face going into that ambulance, because they had told us later it would take 11 hours of surgery to correct it. And when that doctor came in later on in her recovery and said, we're going to go x-ray her and see that what kind of surgery it's going to take, I said, I'm trusting God that you're going to come back and tell me that she doesn't need surgery. And the amazing thing was, he returned and said she needs no surgery. I was so thankful. As the trauma doctor had given us that what looked like a hopeless story, I remembered that I had a God who parted the Red Sea, raised the dead, healed the lame, restored eyesight to the blind. I knew with my God that nothing was impossible. God's strength is made perfect in my weakest moments. I later learned that Tina had stopped breathing 3 times before the ambulance ever arrived. And I was so blessed to know, as I learned more and more after her accident, that God had already put together a medical team right there on the site of her accident that worked on her to help her until the ambulance arrived. She had stopped breathing 3 times. I found myself alone one night, and I was sitting there looking at Tina, her body lying there lifeless. I had just visited a wrecked car and seen where her head had hit everywhere and blood was splattered everywhere. I seen all the evidence of where her body had hit, and I thought, if you survive, it will be a miracle.